Hello there and welcome to Garden Clinic TV. It is rose pruning time, but this year it's been a little bit different because the weather for a lot of home gardeners has not been as cold in winter as it normally is. Of course, some parts of the country are getting very heavy frost. So if you're about to do your rose pruning and it's still frosty, leave it till well into the end of winter and you can just start to feel the spring warmth in the air. Then get in and quickly prune your roses. But in many parts it has been so warm this winter that they've already started to burst into growth. Now, in that case, when you finish your pruning, you can't use the lime sulphur, which is a really good organic way to sterilise the stems. It gets rid of insect eggs, it kills off fungal spores, and it's really efficient at doing that. But if you've got leaves there, when I finish pruning, I won't be able to do that. I might be able to paint it onto the stems very carefully, but generally speaking, I'll give the lime sulphur a miss if there are any leaves left. Now, what do you need? A really good pair of gloves, something that's really going to protect you. If you've got big climbers and big roses like we've got out the front, you need a pair of gloves that go right up to your elbow to protect your arms. And a good pair of secateurs, sharp and clean. And that way you won't be transferring any diseases from one plant to the next. The other thing I wanted to mention, as you can see, these two roses are in pots. Now, we've just run out of room. We've got big roses in the front garden, but these are shrub roses. It's actually the Graham Ross rose, which is supporting NextSense, the Royal Institute for Deaf and Blind Children. So if you'd like to grow that one, have a look for it at your local garden centre. Some of them are bare rooted at the moment, others might be already potted up, but it's a great rose, and it's just the Graham Ross rose. It's developed in France, and it's 100% disease resistant. No black spot. How good is that? No spraying for black spot at all with this particular rose. Now, I've kept them in pots for a couple of years. I haven't repotted them. I did a bit of a summer prune, but where they were, they haven't been all that happy. So I'm doing a bit of renovation, repotting, a bit of root pruning, and also pruning of the top. Now, in all roses, whether it's bush roses or shrub roses, the first thing to go are these little spindly growths. Anything that's thinner than a pencil, you can prune those out because they're not going to do anything for you. They won't thicken up, they won't produce flowers, so get rid of them. By the way, the other thing to remember is don't panic. If you make a mistake, the roses are very, very forgiving and they'll come back into growth and you'll get flowers. If you prune it too hard, you might get maybe less flowers, although there are a lot of rose experts around that'll say the harder you prune them, the better they grow and the more flowers you get. I've never known, it's a bit like growing orchids, I've never known so many different conflicting stories on how to prune and how hard you can prune. But generally speaking, I like to go for about a medium-sized prune, but these are in pots, so it's a little bit different. Now, there's quite a bit of twiggy growth down here. Now, I'll just go in and cut that one off. Okay, I'll go in and cut this little fellow off. It's very spindly. Okay, now there's very likely a little bud just in there and it'll burst into a whole new shoot in spring, but we'll just see how we go. Now, a lot of this twiggy growth, any dead wood, you need to remove that, and more twiggy growth. Now, I just want to show you on the side here, this little piece here, that's dieback. Now, dieback is both a disease and a practical condition of poor pruning. So when I pruned this little stem last time, I did prune to a bud, but the bud wasn't strong enough to stop the dieback happening. So I'll just cut that bit of dead wood out, and the stem above it, I'll see if I can cut to a bud. Now, you always cut to a bud, and that bud is going to be the promise of the new growth into the future and the flowers in the next season. Now, if I can see oh yes, there's a bud just there, so I'll just cut above it. Okay, now this is quite a small plant because it's been in this pot for a while, but always cut to a bud, and if you can, to an outward pointing bud. Now, the little buds are just a little swelling. Sometimes they're visible, sometimes you can just see a little crease in the bark itself, and that's where the bud will be. Now I'll prune this piece back here to that bud there. I might just tidy up this little wound, and there you go. There, that's much better. Now more spindly growth here. Now a lot of people do grow roses because gardens have got smaller and people still want to grow roses. If you don't have the space, then grow them in pots on a balcony or veranda, wherever you like. Roses are quite happy growing in pots, and in fact I know some very expert rose growers who've got all their rose collections in pots and they really enjoy it. I'll just cut back to that stem. This one here I'm going to take out altogether. This is when your secateurs, when they're sharp, they really do the job for you. Okay, now I'll just cut these couple of leaves off here and that little stem. Okay, now I've removed around about 2/3 of the growth. It looks pretty severe, but there's plenty of budwood there and lots of growth potential that'll come away from these stems, and I'll end up with a whole lot of new growth and a new flowering. Now the trick is, and this is really the only thing you've really got to watch out for, this sort of swelling here is where the plant was originally budded onto the rootstock. This is the rootstock here, which is Rosa multiflora. If it starts to grow, it'll produce a sucker, and that sucker will have, doesn't matter what rose you've bought or what rose you think you've got, it'll have red flowers, a lot of them. It's a floribunda rose, so you'll get a whole heap of maybe 6 or 7 red flowers. So if your white rose, red rose, yellow rose has suddenly gone burgundy coloured, it's the rootstock that's starting to sucker. Now that's the rootstock just here. This is the bud union. So all of these growth are coming from the bud, nice and happy. Now when you've got a nice clean rootstock, you might even find that you'll get a water shoot. Water shoots are generally red and they'll come from this region here, around where the buds are. Now the depth of planting, whether it's in a pot or in the garden, is always contentious. I've known expert rose growers in my time and they have opposing opinions. I always like to have the bud union above the ground. Now in some cases, the David Austin roses, they tend to bury theirs a bit deeper. That's England. Here in Australia, I like to have a bit of a stem and get that bud unit and above. So if you get any wayward shoots, you'll know straight away if it's a sucker coming from the rootstock or if it's a water shoot, which you want to keep. Okay, let's have a look at this fellow here. Pretty much the same. Get rid of these little spindly growths. That's a little dead twig there. Take that one back. I'll just cut those couple of leaves off. Prune that one back to there. Yes. Well, as I said, you can't really make a mistake as long as you're above the bud union. I'm going to take this one back to there. This one's take all this twiggy growth because it's not going to do anything for me. I might just prune those leaves off there and leave the shoot because I don't want to prune it down any harder, but I do want to spray it with lime sulphur when I've finished. And finally, just come around to this fellow here. Oh, there's a nice little bud there. Even though it's a bit twiggy, I think I'll still leave it. Cut that one. Yes, it's always 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. Okay, right. There's my rose. Now, once again, this is the rootstock here. This is where it's been grafted. Now, in South Australia, they have a slightly different, and in Western Australia, a slightly different understock. It's generally Rosa canina, the dog rose, because it'll grow in sandier conditions. But most roses today in Australia, for over 200 years, have been grafted onto Rosa multiflora. It's disease resistant, it will withstand drought, it will withstand water inundation, so it's a really tough rootstock. Plus, it'll push a lot of energy into your rose bush. Now, it looks pretty severe, but that's the situation that sometimes can happen. whether it's a potted rose or a rose in the garden. Now I'll just get rid of this stuff here, because what I want to do now is actually repot one of these roses. I might get this one here. Right, okay, now we've got our pruning done. I'm just going to repot this one. I can tell from the weight that it's full of roots, and I can't push in on the side. So whether it's a plastic pot, ceramic pot, if it's really heavy, then it's full of roots, and it is 2 years since I repotted it. So nice fresh potting mix, bit of root pruning, along with the pruning on the top and some fertilising later in the season, it'll really start to burst into growth. So firstly, get it out of it. Oh yeah. Now I'm going to put it back into the same pot, but you can see the roots have really pushed to the outside. So I'm just going to carefully take off this soil. Oh yeah, it's full of roots. And that's what you get with a really good rootstock, a really good understock. You get that vigorous growth. Got a bit of creeping oxalis there too, we don't need that. The other thing you can do is, if you've got any onion weed and things like that that appear in your roses when you're repotting, you can get rid of all of that. Now these are beautiful roses. In fact, it's a trellis rose. If you're looking for this particular rose, my Graham Ross rose, then you can see trellis have got it. But a lot of garden centres are now carrying them as well. Some of them will have bare rooted stock in available, and others will have potted roses up, ready to go straight into the garden. Although, just be wary, at the end of winter, if they've been potted up during, say, May, June, they won't have developed a very big root system. So if you're buying potted roses, little suggestion, carefully upend the pot. You might find that the whole root system falls apart and the soil falls away. So I'd be leaving them, if you're buying potted roses, I'd be leaving it in the pot until maybe next autumn. I know that's maybe not what you were hoping to do, but generally speaking, I think you end up with a much better root system that way, because if you go to plant it out and it's only been in the pot for a month or two, it won't have much of a root system. And the last thing you want to do is to lose all those roots. Now, interestingly, this plant has produced a massive amount of really fine roots and not many big bushy tap roots at all. So I'm just going to give this one a bit of a prune up. Just get rid of all those fine ones, because in a potting mix, there's a little bit of fertiliser in the potting mix, not a great deal, and I don't fertilise my roses in winter. Maybe a bit of sea mungus or something like that, a bit of seaweed, but I wait till the spring growth is really obvious on the stems, and then I can start to feed it up. Good quality potting mix. Always go for red ticks. Check the depth. Yep, that's about right. Then backfill with the soil. I often see people doing a corroboree around their roses when they plant them in the garden with their feet. You know, I've never been a fan of that. It's much better to use water to get rid of air. The air gaps can be a bit of a problem in the garden, or in a pot for that matter. And just use your hands to push it down, and then, yeah, I need a bit more soil. A couple of those roots are sticking up a bit. And then the water will actually get rid of most of those air gaps for you. There we go, ready for another spray with the lime sulphur, which I'll give it a really good soak. It's a really good disinfectant to get rid of insect eggs and fungal spores that are sitting on the stem. and then when the new growth starts to happen, I can give it a good fertilise, and don't forget to keep the water up to them, especially if the season, as it is certainly in our garden, has been very dry, and I'll need to keep these well watered over the next couple of months. Well, there you go. I hope that's given you a few tips. Yes, you can grow your roses in pots. Maybe get hold of this one and support the Royal Institute for Deaf and Blind Children, our family's favourite charity. Get your rose pruning done, maybe this weekend. Give the plants a bit of a lime sulphur spray, fertilise when they start to come into good growth, and you'll have beautiful roses. Now remember, you'll get a spring flush, then a summer light prune over the Christmas break, but another really good feed after Christmas, and then you'll get what I think is the best display of roses, and that's in autumn, because the sun is just a little bit cooler. Well, hope that's given you some information to grow your roses, and certainly you can grow them in pots or in the garden. Now, don't forget to like our segment, and of course to subscribe. That's even better still. And if you've got any questions about rose pruning or rose care or some other plant topics you'd like us to look at, just make some notations there in the comments, and we'll follow that through for you. And any questions you've got, we'll answer those as well. Thanks for watching. Good gardening. Go safely.